به نام خدا و سلام به شما بیننده های عزیز تلویزیون آریانا و آریانا نیوز. من رحمت الله باغبان هستم. به گفتگوی ویژه امشب ما خوش آمدید. مهمان ما در این گفتگو تام فلچر، معاون سرمنشی سازمان ملل در امور بشردوستانه است. میخواهم در این گفتگو وضعیت بشری افغانستان، روند کمک رسانی به مردم افغانستان و تأثیرات کاهش کمک ها را به بحث بگیریم. Good morning, Mr. Fletcher. On behalf of Ariana News, thank you for your time and speaking with us, and welcome to Kabul.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Your visit comes at a time when humanitarian needs in Afghanistan are rising. And international humanitarian aids are shrinking. In this interview, I would like to ask you about the real situation on the ground, how the global community can help, and what hopes remain for the Afghan people. To begin with, how would you describe the real situation on the ground based on your meetings, discussions, and what you saw in Afghanistan?
Well, the needs are very, very high, as you say. Over 20 million people in Afghanistan are in need of humanitarian aid right now. And I wanted to be here for almost a week in order to get to Kandahar, to Kunduz, to be here in Kabul as well, to listen to local communities and understand their sense of what's needed, but also to meet our amazing humanitarian teams out in the field and hear from them. And what they're telling me is that the scale of needs is as great as ever and maybe increasing, because on top of decades of conflict, existing levels of poverty and inequality, you now have the climate crisis, which is driving further needs and hitting in particular the most vulnerable people. And all of that's happening, as you say, at a time of declining donor support. Massive funding cuts, not just from the Americans, but from other traditional donors as well, which mean that we're having to take even tougher choices, make even harder trade-offs as to where to focus our support in order to save as many lives as we can.
Right, so given the increasing competition for aid in the world, with crisis in Sudan, Gaza, and Ukraine, how much of the 2.24 billion appeal for Afghanistan has been funded so far? And what are your concerns in this year or the shortfall of the aid?
So only about 14% of that appeal has been funded so far. And that's a pretty depressing stat to have to work with. It means several things. Firstly, that we've got to work even harder to get the message out there to the international community that we have to sustain this presence, sustain this work, that the needs are as great as ever. And that's really why I'm here, is to get that message out globally. Secondly, we have to look for new partners, new allies. We have to think about how we engage the parties, the partners from the region, the private sector, how we engage more finance, more support from individuals globally. And then thirdly, it means we have to get much better at what we do. Now, we have extraordinary people doing extraordinary work, delivering every day for Afghan communities, but we have to work in an even more effective, efficient, smart, prioritized way to ensure that every dollar we have is going to support the Afghan people.
Right. What are the most immediate consequences of the cuts in international aid, especially the suspension of the USAID, and which sectors are most affected?
Well, it hits all sectors of our work here. The most immediate impact I've been seeing over the last few days, I was witnessing a mine detonation yesterday afternoon. And very sadly, 55 people are killed every month by mines in Afghanistan, but that whole program will be reduced. I've seen it in the impact on the programs to support women and girls, massive priority for us internationally here. And I spent time with women yesterday who were telling me about the impact of the closure of over 400 medical centers, for example, that they're having to cycle 3 hours in order to give birth in the nearest hospital. I saw in Kandahar Hospital the impact of those cuts already in terms of the facilities they have, the medical equipment, the medical supplies, the fact that 3 or 4 people are sharing every single bed in that hospital. So the cuts are hitting already, and some people are claiming that aid cuts don't kill people, but I can tell you, because I'm seeing it, aid cuts kill.
Moving to the next question, thousands of Afghan refugees are returning to their country daily, mostly from neighboring countries like Iran and Pakistan. How is the UN preparing to assist these returnees? And what role can the de facto authorities play to support their reintegration in the society and their communities?
Well, this is a massive growing priority, as you know, and I was up near the Pakistan border at our reception centre, so meeting those families as they crossed from Pakistan, many of them forced to leave at very short notice, and many are arriving with nothing. They've had to uproot their whole lives. I spoke to one gentleman who'd been in Pakistan 23 years and had had to leave at a day's notice. So their situation is desperate. But what you saw at that reception centre was WFP providing high energy biscuits, UNICEF providing a safe space for the kids to play and feel comfortable while their parents handled their registration. You saw IOM and UNHCR handling that big process about what would happen to them next, making sure they had the right papers, the right documents. You saw NGOs working alongside us. You saw the private sector providing them with SIM cards for their telephones. So you have the UN family operating as one, the humanitarian movement operating as one to respond to their needs. But the numbers are escalating very, very fast. So it's a huge challenge.
Right. How can the UN support Afghan rural communities, farmers who are reeling from extreme shocks of climate change, especially those who were previously reliant on opium cultivation and now they're left with no alternative livelihood options?
So here, you're right, to identify is a massive challenge. And I think we may see more needs driven by climate change in the next 4 or 5 years than by conflict and crisis, which is a big shift of the traditional model in Afghanistan. And in Kandahar, you can see how the length, the duration of the droughts and the intensity of the droughts, the regularity of the droughts is driving many away from their traditional sources of livelihoods and from agriculture. Great progress has been made against narcotics, against the poppy, but we have to find other sources of income for those farmers. I released just recently $16.6 million for communities affected by climate change. So that ensures they have food and water and support on alternative livelihoods. And it's part of our effort to be more innovative, to be more prepared for the crises that are ahead of us.
Given the operational challenges, how is the UN adapting its humanitarian delivery? And have there been any recent improvements in negotiating humanitarian access with the de facto authorities?
So I've launched something we call the Humanitarian Reset, where we are reforming ourselves to become even more efficient, more prioritized, smarter in our delivery, more innovative, using more technology, leaner and greener in the way that we work. We're also having to get smaller as a sector because of the funding cuts. It looks as though the entire humanitarian sector will shrink by about 1/3. So these are big changes in the way we operate. As part of it, much more of the work will be done at a local level, closer to the communities that we serve, away from wealthy capitals, away from rich areas where a lot of the power has been concentrated, and actually in the rural areas and close to those who need us most. And my conversations with de facto authorities have been about trying to identify where the priorities are greatest, the needs are greatest, how we can ensure that there is a shared aspiration around reaching as many Afghan people, communities as possible with the support that we provide.
You did not mention the operational challenges that OCHA and other UN bodies mentioned before.
So there are real operational challenges here as anywhere. We always want to get access to all parts of the country. It's very important to us that we're never blocked from accessing different areas of the country. Access is pretty good here, but can always be improved. We always want to see improvements in the way that MOUs are delivered, registrations for NGOs, and so on, to make our work more straightforward. And these are ongoing conversations. It's part of the dialogue I have with the de facto authorities. Clearly, security is a challenge, and the de facto authorities talk to me a lot about the efforts they will make to ensure that we have security so that we can deliver. And ultimately, we have to be independent, impartial, neutral in the way that we carry out our mission. And that will always be a core part of my conversation with the authorities.
Right. What message do you have for the donor countries, especially the US, that have reduced or suspended its funding for Afghanistan? And what should be the world doing differently to support the Afghan people in this critical time?
So my message is very simple to donors and the international community. It's don't retreat. Don't leave Afghanistan alone to deal with these huge needs that it faces. We have to be here. We have to be here in a sustained way, in dialogue with local communities, delivering as effectively as we can, and with the generosity that is required to meet this moment.
Right, thanks. What are OCHA's priorities and initiatives for Afghanistan in the coming months?
So we're going through a big reform program at the moment across the whole humanitarian sector, from Gaza to Ukraine to Afghanistan. And as part of that, we're looking to be more strategic about where we deliver. And OCHA's job is coordination. The C in OCHA is the most important letter in our acronym. That's what we're judged for. And that's what the UN family and the humanitarian movement need us to deliver. Really, really strong coordination. So that's the major priority for our team. In a period when we are scaling back, we are having to reduce the overall impact of what we're doing, we have to try and protect the essential work from those funding cuts.
Right. What role can the de facto authorities play in filling these funding gaps and relieving the shocks caused by funding cuts so that the ordinary Afghan people are not hit too hard?
So ultimately, it's for the de facto authorities, it's for the government in place to deliver health, education, shelter, livelihoods, all of the priorities that you've identified, that we've discussed so far. And what I hope we can do as the international community is to support Afghanistan's progress in a way that allows us to imagine a time when actually we're not here. We don't need to be here as humanitarians in the future, because Afghanistan has found its own way, its own trajectory, and has delivered the economic progress that is needed to stand fully independently in that way of international support. That's got to be our aspiration, is to imagine our own departure.
Many Afghans feel that they have little influence over how it is delivered. Are there specific efforts underway to involve more local communities, especially women, in shaping humanitarian response?
Absolutely. So we cannot deliver this humanitarian mission that we believe in without our amazing female colleagues. It simply is impossible for us to deliver it. And so if we are to deliver at the scale that we need to, then their role in that is essential. But also the role of women in local communities in setting the objectives, the agenda for what we do. I spend a lot of the visit meeting privately with women leaders, with women at the grassroots level, to say to them, what do you need? What are your priorities? Where are we getting it right, and where are we getting it wrong? And asking them to set the agenda rather than having it set in Kabul or New York.
Right. You have seen humanitarian crises around the world. What strikes you most about what you are witnessing here in Afghanistan?
So it's my job to go to some of the toughest places in the world. I've recently been in Gaza, where the ferocity of the Israeli offensive there is driving massive humanitarian needs. I've been on the Ukraine-Russia front lines. I've been in Sudan, which is the largest scale crisis. What you have here is a long-term humanitarian crisis. You have one with a combination of factors that are adding to each other: conflict, inequality, now climate change on top of it. You have one where the political relationships are very complex, And the relationship between the de facto authorities and the outside world is, of course, difficult, problematic. And so that creates its own set of challenges. But as humanitarians, we like to take on the tough challenges. That's why we're here. And we have to find creative, agile ways through those challenges so we can deliver for Afghan people.
Right. If you could send one message directly to the Afghan people, what would it be?
Keep hope. There is, things are tough. We recognize how tough it is. To Afghan women and girls, we hear you. Your voices aren't going unheard. Your challenges aren't unseen. And we are here for the long term. We are here as the United Nations with whatever funding we can get to deliver as effectively as possible for you.
Tom Fletcher, Under Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, thank you very much for your time and insight with Ariana News.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate your efforts and your humanitarian work to support the Afghan people.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you.